Hi, and thank you for joining us for this week's State of the Leadership Simple and Beyond. That is Robert Hilliard. I am Whitney Wiley, and we are here on Thursdays, 12 noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, talking all things leadership. And this week we are continuing our discussion on unlocking the power of effective one on ones. Robert, did you have any one on ones since the last time we met?
Well, if you're talking about coaching sessions, yes, but
No,
I am
someone coaching you one on one in your
no,
book.
no, I am my own employee, so
You know what? There are one on ones in other aspects of life as well.
that's true.
So
That's true. That's
you never know where they might pop up. So last week we talked about why having one-on-ones are important. The fe- uh, what did we talk about? We talked about why they're important, the foundation of having these productive meetings, uh, goal alignment, active listening, and I think there was one other thing that we touched on. Um,
we talked a lot. We talked about being prepared, have relevant
being
topics.
prepared. Yes,
Mhm, mhm.
yes, that was the
Being
one. Being
prepared.
prepared. And so, any opening thoughts picking up from where we left off before we dive into what's on our agenda for today?
No, I guess we're going to cover it once we dive in.
Okay, awesome. So, I will bring up our PowerPoint where we were last year. Again, we talked about the importance, preparedness, um, active listening, really important, and goal alignment. So today we're going to pick up talking about the power of feedback. Feedback and why feedback is important. The good news for you is that we did a deep dive into feedback back a while. And so you can find, I think we did two episodes, one on giving feedback and one on receiving feedback. So you can look for those and do a deeper dive into the topic, but we'll cover it here because it is an important part of your one-on-ones, right? Feedback in general is hugely important for growth, for you, for your people, for creating camaraderie and teamwork and all of that. But we're going to talk about it in relation to one-on-ones today specifically. So, Robert.
Well, yeah, and I believe one of the key factors that we talked about in that previous session episode was that you're giving feedback for performance improvement. You shouldn't be giving feedback because you've let the performance get to the point where you're just so fed up. Well, now you're going to give that person feedback. So you should, take a look at that, what that person is doing. And when it hits that critical point where, you need to address that performance, that is when you're having that feedback. But we're talking about having one-on-ones. We said having them regularly counts, and regular for one person may not be regular for another person. So you have to figure that out and weave in feedback into those conversations.
Absolutely. And I think the sort of the most important aspect of feedback, particularly in this context, and then all the other stuff is, I would say, gravy, is that we're talking about it as a means to, as a catalyst for continuous improvement and
Right.
excellence, right? And that it's not just about, I think a lot of time people think of feedback when it relates to guidance or correction, but we're talking about how can you make sure that your people are continuously moving towards bettering themselves, and as it relates to receiving feedback, right? That you're creating an environment where people feel free to give you feedback, And you can couch it in that way. It's about me continuously improving as a person, as a leader, as your boss. Whatever aspect that you are working under in your organization, that looking for opportunities to get feedback is hugely important. And so you have to think about it in that context for your people. When you sit down with them, taking into account what we talked about last week in terms of it being regular and goal alignment. When you are clear and your people are clear about what the goals are, what the shared goals are, where you're moving to, it makes giving feedback possible to be specific and actionable in relation to that particular goal, right? Because now you have, it's not an amorphous or some all over the place kind of, well, I was thinking this. No, this is what you're working on. And here is specific actionable feedback that I can give you that will help you move in the direction that you're trying to move.
Yeah, and also we tend to think of feedback as negative. Feedback can be positive as well. And we want to make sure that we are balancing that out so people know the things that they're doing that are good and that are productive and that are helpful so they can continue to do that. And to your point, you want to give them specific feedback when you're making those points to them so they know exactly what they did that was helpful, exactly what they did that was efficient or effective.
You know, the specific piece. And I think about this in terms of what, particularly when we want people to continue doing something. You can say, oh, what you did was good or helpful or positive. And when I know exactly what that was, then I can say, oh, I can duplicate that without knowing exactly, specifically what you're talking about. It's a little difficult to be able to duplicate, to replicate. And in the end, that's what you want, particularly on the positive side. On the negative side or the constructive feedback side, if you can identify and specify what someone was doing that you want them to discontinue doing, the more specific you are, then they can say, oh, that's what you were talking about. And I think about, I was trying to think of a situation in a work situation, and I'm not sure that I was struggling to come up with one, but I bet you have one.
As far as what's concerned.
Specificity.
Oh yeah, I have lots of them. But I want to pinpoint one thing about being specific, and that's your language. And then we can go into more detailed examples later. But language. And I remember having a conversation with somebody and asking them how somebody did something, and they said it was pretty good. And I said, when I was growing up, pretty good was just above sucking, right? So it's like, it was pretty good. And they were like, no, I meant I meant it was good. I said, no, good is good. Pretty good is not quite good. It's a little bit above mediocre. So you want to have really specific. And I remember this conversation was very interesting because there was a part of it was generational, but the other part of it was the language part of it, right? I've had and I've used this example on the show before. I had a boss that asked me to get a report to him on Friday. To me, Friday was all day, but to him, Friday was by 9 a.m. It's not very specific. And then we had the conversation, he's wanting this report. And I'm like, yeah, I'm working on it right now. It was like 8:30 in the morning and it wasn't going to be ready by 9 o'clock. And then, so we're having a back and forth. And I said, you did not tell me that it needed to be done by 9 a.m. He goes, I think I did. I said to him, the fact that you're saying to me, you think you did means that you did not. I was able to get it to him by 9:15, and they didn't use it in the meeting that he wanted it for anyway. But that's a completely different story. But you need to be specific.
Yes.
So and there was some, and that was feedback. It's not the kind of feedback we're talking about in this episode, but that is feedback. Anytime you're having those kinds of two-way conversations, it's feedback. When we think about systems, feedback is the result you're getting. As you're watching something happen, it's the result. You're getting feedback from that. So it's a type of feedback, and that's what we're in this particular episode, we're talking about when you're meeting with people on those one-on-ones and you're giving them targeted performance feedback. Be very specific. Come with your examples. That's part of being prepared. You come with your examples, your dates, quotes you've heard them say, quotes you heard other people say, the specific time of the incident. I've taught many people how to use the STARS approach to performance feedback, situation, task, action, result. Those things help as well. So you want to be as specific as you can.
The other thing I want to encourage is creating an environment. We talk about this a lot, right? Creating the environment that allows what you want to flourish. And so if you want to create a culture where feedback is welcomed and valued, right? When you are giving feedback, you need to model that, right? So that when you're receiving feedback, that you're listening, that you're seeking to understand, and that you consider how you respond and use that, so that other people, the people that you are giving feedback to, they can see how receiving feedback happens. And if you are prone, and I unfortunately have an example in this area, right? If you are prone to responding negatively or defensively when someone is giving you feedback, then you're telling people that's the way that we receive feedback around here. And so you have to be the example in that. And so I had a boss who claimed, wanted to receive feedback, wanted to be better. But when he received it, he was quite defensive about it. And so then he was constantly wondering why no one said anything when he asked for, because people were then conditioned. He's going to respond in a way that's not helpful, not positive, sometimes attacking the person that was providing what he had asked for. And people just learned, you don't want to do that, because the consequences of providing that feedback is not good.
Yeah, it also is an outgrowth of in some cases, the culture of the organization. Some organizations, you cannot give executives or managers feedback. Even if they ask for it, it's almost like a lure, a trap. And when you do that, it is taken in a negative way. Even if you say it in the most professional, the most balanced way, it will be taken as negative.
And I want to reiterate what you just said, which is understanding the culture, right? Understanding the culture. And so everything you do is creating the culture. So if you want to have a culture of feedback, and where it is about improvement, then you have to respond in alignment with that. You cannot say that you want something and then punish people for giving you what you asked for. That will not get you the culture that you claim that you're looking for.
Yeah. No, I just think that a lot of leaders, they don't really know the culture they're looking for. I mean, that's a completely different conversation, right? because they think that, well, I want I want a culture that does this. But in order to do that, I want the culture to be like this. In order to do that, you have to put in the work. And like you say, you have to be an example of that. You have to, people will do what is rewarded. If you're not rewarding people to move in the direction of the culture you want, it's not going to change. And the other side of that is culture change can take decades, you know, depending on how ingrained it is, and because it comes from the founders of the organization, how ingrained it is into the roots of the organization. It could take decades, or it may not change at all, or very little. So you have to really have a concerted effort. You have to be really committed to having that culture change.
Absolutely. And then as it relates to the feedback, follow up is a part of this as well, right? And so you provide feedback, and the goal is improvement. You have to discuss what is the follow up, right? What are the actions that are going to be taken in order to make that improvement? When's the follow up, and what that is going to look like? What does success look like? Right. And it's not enough to say, here are some specific steps that you can take, or better yet, have the person you're coaching come up with the specific steps, but you're going to agree on them whichever way you go. But there's the actionable steps that are going to be taken. What does success look like? How do we know when we've gotten where we're going? How do we know that the improvement has happened? And so you need to be clear and specific about what that looks like as well.
Absolutely.
All right. The next one is fostering an environment of personal development. And overall, that's what we've been talking about, right? The whole point of your one-on-ones is that it's an opportunity not just to discuss the task and the responsibilities, but it's really an investment in the future. It's an investment in your team members, and it's an investment in the direction that you're going as a team. And the way we are talking about getting there is through nurturing personal development, professional development. And as each person improves, the team overall improves.
Absolutely. And again, just making that, we're linking it to culture. You have to have that culture where personal development is encouraged, so that people feel that they can actually get better at their jobs and move their career forward, move themselves forward.
And I want to say it's not just about, and I think sometimes this may get lost, right? And we're talking about development. It's not just about them developing the skills that they need to do the job that they have. As part of what you're doing and going back to goal alignment, right? You have the organizational goals, and then there's your department or your team's goals that serve the organization's goals. And then there are individual goals that you want to tie so that everything is tied together. And so what's needed for the people on your team to become the better versions of themselves as people, as employees, as team members? And so some of that's going to be skills based. Some of it is going to be outside of skills specific, right? And it may be about them developing in the sort of the soft skills side, or their people skills, because there's an aspiration maybe to move someday into management. And the more we can help people develop those skills before they become managers, right, the better. And not waiting until they are in the position and then finding out that maybe they're struggling with those. We could be helping our people develop those. So when you have an eye towards the future and what your team members aspire to, whatever that is, and it's going to be different for different people on your team. And what we're talking about is this really proactive approach to leading your team members rather than having to wait and do the reactive work of bringing people back. Is the proactive work of tapping into what matters to them, what they aspire to, what they are motivated to do, so that they are contributing, again, the best versions of themselves as employees and members of your team.
Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Awesome. The next one is really about putting all the pieces together, right? And what does that look like? What does that look like? And we talked about preparation and active listening and goal alignment, feedback, and personal development. And so it's one thing to say, I'm going to sit down and have these one-on-ones. And again, going to the proactive nature of this, I want to share this. I have a client who told me recently that she just started doing one-on-ones.
Okay.
She's been managing people for quite some time. And it's interesting that somewhere along the way, I thought we had talked about her doing one-on-ones. And I don't know if I misunderstood that she was doing them or that we had a different maybe understanding or context of what that meant. But when we talked about it, she said that she had started doing them, that to a person, everyone on her team came to her afterwards and said, thank you. Right? Thank you for doing this. Thank you for taking the time. And I know what we had been working on was, and a lot of this boils down to time management, right? That in order for you to have the time to have one-on-ones, you've got to be in control of your time. You've got to plan for this because it is a extra, right? It's very easy to, I have work as a manager, I have work to do. My team members have work to do. In order for me to do my work, I'm pretty much sort of ignoring them.
Right.
Until there's a problem with one of them or the team as a whole. And so in order to keep that from happening, right, you have to be proactive in order to be prepared for meetings, right? To develop your skills in the different areas, active listening and giving and even receiving feedback. It takes time on your part to develop as a leader, which one of the things that you get out of listening to us every week is an opportunity for you to develop, right? Whether it's here, other webinars, working with a coach, etc., right? The more you continue to develop as a leader and get control of your time, learn to take control of your time, right? It allows you to be proactive in this. And one of the things that she was struggling with is that she was constantly putting out fires. And it was exhausting. She was exhausted. And so, we started talking about how to recover some of that, working on herself outside of work to make sure that she could show up each day energized, right? And so taking care of yourself, self-care is a part of this. And what happens is sometimes we learn something and then we operate as if that's in a vacuum.
Mhm.
And none of these things are in a vacuum. You
Right.
have to take care of yourself. The more you take care of yourself, right? The more your people take care of themselves, the more you are more likely you are to be able to show up energized, energetic, with the right frame of mind, being resilient, being able to be flexible and adaptable, go with the flow when change is happening. When you're not taking care of yourself, it's harder to do those things because the energy, you only have so much energy, right? And you're expending that energy sort of surviving. And so it takes taking a step back. And I dare say, I'm going to take some credit. I can't take all of the credit, but I'm going to take some credit, right? Helping her to sort of take a step back, really work on um, taking care of herself so that she can be a better version of herself, allows her to now show up and say, how can I structure my days in order to be available? And one of the things that she did was to set aside time each day for her to work uninterrupted, right? And to plan her days in such a way that she could make time to meet with her people on a regular basis.
Yeah.
And so it is possible. We're talking about being proactive. That goes back to what is it that you want? What's your vision for your team, right? What are your collective shared goals? What direction are you moving in, and how can you take the time, make the time in order to take the steps, the action steps that you need to take? Baby steps sometimes, right? Um, Giant leaps when you're able, but to continuously take actions that move you towards the vision that you have for your own leadership, how you show up, and for your team.
I totally agree. It's the element of self-care that you were talking about is so important. And I want to put a little wrinkle in there because we talked about you talked about time management, but it's also attention management. It's what you putting your attention to. And someone that was training me a while ago, and they said, we'll talk about time management. And they said, well, they didn't believe in time management. They believed in attention management. And I'm really of that mind now that one of the reasons why we don't have time is because we don't know how to manage our attention. We sometimes get caught in this thing. Well, I've been away for, took an extended weekend, so I'm going to go through all 9,000 of my emails. Why are you doing that? They can't seem to tear themselves away, and then they're missing other things they can be doing.
Yeah.
So really looking at the things that are really important, not necessarily urgent, the things that are important, and taking care of those things so that you can you schedule those things out and you handle them piece by piece by piece. And when you start to do that, the fires will go away. But a lot of times we look at those urgent things and it's like, I got to get that done. And all the stuff and all that stuff that I should have scheduled, I didn't do. And now it's slid over into this. And now it's a raging fire when I could have done it piece by piece and been done with it. So we really look at what we are focusing on. And I'm a big, I really, I don't want to say I'm a champion of it, but what I try to do for myself is if I see something that I don't necessarily like to do, front load that and start and work on that at least a little bit so that there is time to work on the other stuff. I'm not putting that thing off indefinitely.
No, I agree with you 100%. The other side of that, and I mentioned it, but I love that you put it in terms of attention, and the two things that I think that go together in order to really create time management is attention, but intention.
Yeah.
Right. And intention is one of the pillars of simple leadership, which is what is it that you are intending? right? What is it that you are envisioning? What is it that you are moving towards? Where are, before you can put your attention on something, you need to know what you're intending to do. And so they go hand in hand. And the more you can do that, the more you can recover time time back. And the other part of that is time management really is about boundary management.
Mhm.
Right. And so it becomes about setting boundaries and being clear about what's important. What are the highest priorities, the things that you're going to put your attention on? What are those priorities so that you can put your attention there? And the things that are outside of that, it's the Eisenhower matrix, right? The
Mhm.
4 Ds of
Mhm.
delegation is do it, delay it, delegate it, or dump it. And you have to become a master of a system, whether it's that one or some other system, of helping you to figure out what is it that you should be doing and what is it that only you can do. What is it that other people can do? And I know that sometimes the ego gets wrapped up in this, and we think we have to be doing all the things. We have to show up in all the ways. We have to know everything, and we have to do everything. And one, no, because you can't. You can't do all the things. You don't need to know all the things. You have a team for a reason, and different people bring different things to the team. And the best thing you can do is to make sure you're leveraging, and I'm going to talk another pillar of simple, is leveraging the strengths of the other people on your team to help get all the things done.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love how you brought in the pillars of simple in there, because they're important.
And so you bring these pieces together. And I want to say this. We've talked about the different steps that you can take. Um, be there, be there and all in. I think it's really easy to sort of schedule the one-on-ones as a check-a-box, right? We're checking the box. I should do them, therefore I'm going to do them. I'm going to do them when I can, sporadically. I'm going to do them half-heartedly. And it's really important that you adopt a different mindset around this and embrace, I would say, give it your all, and embrace the potential of what it can do for your team, being all in. And if somehow you get to the end and being all in and it doesn't get you where you want to go, then, I guess you could stop doing them, or you could just pay them lip service. But I think if you will go all in, recognizing the value and the potential that it brings to your team, that you will see a difference. And as it relates to that time management component, the attention, boundary management, and your own, I dare say, energy, that you'll get that back, right? I truly believe you get that back, because you'll find that you have fewer challenges out of your team member as it relates to performance management, right? As it relates to maybe behavioral issues, turnover, right? It will benefit in all the ways. And so if you put the time and energy, the attention on the front end, then you will have to expend less energy. So you get to decide, do you want to expend it on the front end, or do you want to expend it on the back end, where chances are that that energy is trying to rein back in negative behaviors, negative performance, rather than encouraging and moving the team in the direction that you want.
Yeah, it's much better to stay on top of it, or try to stay on top of it, than to try to fix it after there's a problem. So I hear you.
And so want to leave you with a few little practical tips, right? And so some of these we've talked about, but I want to add in a couple of new ones. So regularly scheduling meetings, right? Consistency is your friend. Consistency is key. Regularly schedule your one-on-ones. And as Robert mentioned at the beginning, the frequency or what's regular depends on who you're meeting with, right? And don't make it so structured that it doesn't work. There are some people on your team for whom a weekly meeting is going to be best, for others bi-weekly or monthly, but set a regular cadence so that people know when you are expected to meet, and make them non-negotiable on your calendar, right? It's non-negotiable for them, it's non-negotiable for you. And so that may take some experimentation to play around with your schedules to find out what makes sense as it relates to regularly scheduled meetings.
Absolutely.
Have an agenda. We talked about that, right? Being prepared. And you can develop a template if you want. There are probably templates out there that you can use, that you can customize for each session, so that you have the opportunity to cover some things on a regular basis, and then still have time for things that pop up. But updates, feedback, reviewing the goals, and developing discussions, things that need to be addressed that come up. Having an agenda and preparing ahead of time, I believe Robert said this last week, it's going to actually increase your time because it's making the time that you're having in your meetings more effective, right? It makes that time more productive, rather than getting in the meeting and trying to figure out, well, what should we be talking about?
Right.
And it makes sure that you cover all the things that need to get covered, right? And so in between meetings, that means paying attention, keeping notes, right? Jotting things down if something comes up that you want to talk about, making sure that it's actually on the agenda. And I would say keeping your meetings, and you can share your thoughts on this, keeping the meetings relatively short, right? We're not talking about 2-hour meetings, and if you're doing this regularly, you probably can get away with half-hour meetings, right? And some weeks you have a half an hour schedule, you might not need half an hour. You can go through the agenda, or there's not so much, because you're meeting on a regular basis. You have fewer fires that you have to put out.
I agree. There are very few meetings that need to go longer than an hour, in my opinion. There are some meetings that will go beyond that point, but most of them you can cover the stuff that that's on your agenda, if you have an agenda, in an hour. And I think part of the problem is that a lot of these folks, they want to freewheel it, and they get in that meeting, and there's a lot of glad handing, there's a lot of wasted time, and then they get to the agenda finally after they've spent 20 minutes catching up, and then they wonder why, we're not going to cover that thing, and then the next meeting you have other stuff from the last meeting that you have to talk about, so that meeting runs long. So these type of things happen. I have an animal that's trying to escape, so I may have to but you have these meetings that run over. So no, I don't believe that most meetings can be, most things can be covered in less than an hour.
Yeah,
We'll handle this.
I absolutely agree with that. The next is the use technology, right? Use technology to your advantage. You want to leverage tools that you have, right? Shared documents. If you're on Slack or Google Docs, whatever tools that you're using, technology tools that you're using, right? And leverage those tools, project management apps, calendar invites, make sure that the agenda is visible, and maybe your agenda is what's the word I want to look for? It's fluid, right? You're adding to it, the person that you're meeting with is adding to it, and then at some point there's a cutoff point at which you are changing what's on the agenda, because you still want to be able to be prepared to have the discussion about those topics. So it is maybe it's the day before the meeting, 24 hours before the meeting, you set it's flexible and fluid until that point, and then after that point you're not changing the agenda anymore, making sure that both parties are able to come prepared and to stay on track while you're meeting.
Can I just add something to that?
Mm-hmm.
Also, I know we're talking about one-on-ones, but meetings in general, you need to have your processes. So if you're going to use a process, or brainstorming, or you're going to use a force field analysis, bring that stuff and be prepared to use them effectively, and not just freewheeling it. I remember I used this example several times, that I had a manager that was trying to get us as a department to do brainstorming, and every time we made a suggestion, he said that won't work here, so we stopped talking. And so that brainstorming session lasted about 5 minutes. He had budgeted that portion of the meeting for half an hour, and it was a fiasco. And I thought to myself, two things: this person doesn't understand this whole process of brainstorming, how it works. You put all ideas out there. And two, the second part of it was, he could have had me facilitate that part of the meeting. I do that kind of stuff all the time. But I just said, you know what, I'm gonna just sit here, and hopefully he'll learn that on his own. And I don't know if he ever did.
Hey, you can lead a horse to water.
Correct.
You want to build in flexibility is another tip that I would say, right? Yes, you have an agenda. You can have at the end of the agenda, a few minutes set aside to address something that may come up that wasn't able to be on the agenda, right? And so while I suggested that you have a cutoff point so that everyone is clear what is on the agenda, you can still have some built-in flexibility by providing an opportunity for something to be brought up, if for whatever reason somebody hadn't thought of it, or it came up in that period afterwards. It just shows that you value the concerns and are responsive to the needs of people as they pop up. And then the last thing that I want to say on the practical side is that you've got to prioritize privacy and confidentiality, right? That the one-on-one meetings are held in private. They're not open, right? You're not having them, let's say you work in a co-working space, or one of those open office situations, that you're not having the one-on-ones in the open, that these should be private. The conversation should be open and honest, and can take place without interruption. And so if that means that you cannot have everybody's one-on-ones on the same day, because that would take up the entirety of your day, and you can't go all day without being interrupted, then maybe you only get one or two per day, all right, spaced out, so that you're not sort of off grid for some extended period of time, and people are constantly coming to you to put out other fires or to talk with you, right? Give each and every one-on-one the attention, the respect, the privacy, confidentiality that it deserves.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
All right. So with that, right, we have come to the end of our discussion about one-on-ones. We would invite you, if you have any thoughts, if there's something that you think is important that we've left out, we would love to hear it. You can drop it in the comments. You can send us a note, a DM, I guess you would call it, right? Reach out by email and let us know what your thoughts are about one-on-ones in general, how you do them, things that you might do differently, or things that you disagree with. We like feedback, and so if you've got something that you think, where we were off the mark, share it. Let us know.
Absolutely.
And so with that, we want to thank you for joining us for the 2 episodes here on effective one-on-ones. Go back and watch part 1 if you did not see that, and put the 2 pieces together. If someone wanted to meet with you, Robert, and have a one-on-one with you so that they could have better one-on-ones with their people, how might they get in touch with you?
They can email me at inspireme@roberthilliardcoaching.com, or they can just go to my website, Robert Hilliard Coaching, and fill out the contact form there. Let me know what goals or challenges you have, and I will get back to you, and we can set up a discovery conversation.
It might help for me to know what I'm clicking when I'm running the scroller.
Oh, okay.
Let's run in that chyron across the bottom to make sure that I picked. He said roberthilliardcoaching.com. I didn't exactly put that up there when you said that.
That's
So,
okay.
There again, roberthilliardcoaching.com.
Excellent.
And if you want to reach out to me, feel free. shiftingintoaction.now.site, shiftingintoaction.now.site. Would love to help you with your one-on-one feedback, help you with personal development, coaching, what you need to be a better leader, help you lead your people better. And if effective one-on-ones is something that's on your agenda, let's see how we can help you to do that. Also, if you've got a topic that you would like for us to cover, please let us know. Again, you can send a message. Let us know if there's a topic you would like to see us cover in the future, whether it's a story in the news or a burning topic that is out in that you've read about on the interwebs or wherever. Let us know. We would love to look into it and cover it here. And finally, if you are a leader and you're interested in being a guest on the show, we are always looking for guests. We're going to be bringing more guests to you over the near future. And so if you would like to be one of them, you can drop us a line, and we have an application form. I will put that in the
show notes,
a post for this. We'll put that in the post for this, and you can click on the form and submit your application, and we can talk about having you as a guest on the forum. What we're looking for basically are people to come on and talk about their leadership journey, what you've learned about yourself and leadership over time. And so as a way to help other people to be leaders, better leaders themselves. So if you've got a story, a journey that you think will be helpful to others, we'd love to have you on the show. So with that, we've come to the end of our time together. We want to thank you once again for being here. And we're here Thursdays, 3 p.m. Eastern, 12 noon Pacific. Again, talking all things leadership. And until next time, take care.
Bye now.